The night my future ended started with a vibration I pretended not to feel. We were sitting under a canopy of string lights at Trattoria Valentina, linen napkins folded like sails, my grandmother already on her second Prosecco. A violinist drifted between tables. The room smelled like butter and basil and the kind of optimism you can taste. The maitre d' had just congratulated us on tomorrow's big day when my phone, face down beside the bread plate, buzzed long enough to make the flatware sing. Caleb glanced at it and then at me. Not suspicious. Just curious, the way you look at a cloud to see if it's coming your way. I'll silence it, I said, and slid the phone into my clutch without looking. I knew exactly who it was. Of course I did. People like me always know. Derek, you'll never admit it out loud, but I know you miss me at times like this. I had not slept with Derek. I told myself that sentence so often it had the rhythm of a prayer. We'd dated in our early 20s, back when feelings felt like roller coasters and being on again/off again counted as a personality. We flamed out in the dramatic way people do when they mistake highs for health. Then, last winter, he DM'd me a picture of the crappy diner where we once split pancakes at 2 a.m. Remember? I didn't answer. Then he sent a photo of our old street after a snowstorm. Miss this? I answered with a snowflake because emoji lies are easier to forgive yourself for. By February, we were catching up. By March, catching up became you always understood me. By April, we were writing paragraphs that felt like holding hands under a table. I insisted to myself that it was harmless because there were no hotel receipts, no lipstick-stained shirts, no scenes you could capture with a camera and say, aha. But on my phone were sentences that sounded like cheating even if you squinted. Caleb proposed last August under a cotton candy sunset at the lake. He is the kind of man who carries jumper cables and remembers your mother's birthday without needing to be reminded. He's steady in a way that makes other people's chaos feel like a rumor. He doesn't demand to be the center of attention, he trusts gravity. He calls his father on Sundays and tips in cash. That night at the lake, he tied the ring to a ribbon because he knows I drop things. I said yes with both hands. He did not snoop to find the messages. That's the part people always assume, because it's easier to frame him as the villain and me as the poor, impulsive creature who needs saving from a snooper. My iPad did it. I'd set it up months ago to stream recipes in the kitchen. I'd never turned off iMessage. At 6:03 that morning, while Caleb brewed coffee and shook cinnamon into the filter like he was coaxing luck, the iPad lit up with a paragraph-long confession from Derek about a dream he had where I wore my old denim jacket and laughed into his neck. Caleb did what good men do, he stared at proof until it stopped being a surprise. He didn't confront me then. He cooked, we loaded the car with favor boxes, we dropped off the seating chart. He kissed my forehead outside the bakery and said, "I'll see you tonight." I mistook the calm for acceptance. It was certainty. At the rehearsal, he said his lines without irony. He squeezed my fingers when the officiant joked about anyone having lawful cause to object. He smiled for photos where we looked exactly like two people 2 inches from forever. Afterward, he disappeared for 20 minutes while I posed with my bridesmaids under a pergola. I assumed he'd gone to throw up because his stomach gets jumpy before events. In reality, he was meeting the restaurant manager. I know that now because the restaurant manager told me later, in the kind tone people use when the truth has to be dressed in soft clothes. He asked that we take care of your guests no matter what, she said. He left his card on file and said to send the bill to him. At 7:40, between toasts, Caleb tapped his water glass. The room quieted in that way rooms do when a good man asks. He didn't hold a phone. He didn't hold a printout. He held the back of his chair like it was a ledge. "Thank you for being here," he said, and I relaxed because that's the sentence every groom begins with, and rituals are a kind of mercy. "I'm grateful you traveled and took time off and wore shoes you hate. I have one thing to say and then I'll get out of the way." He looked at me. Not cruelly. Not the way people look at villains. The way you look at a person you love when you are about to put down a weight you can no longer carry for them. I'm not getting married tomorrow. A laugh barked from somewhere near the bar, hopeful and ugly. My mother's hand flew to her throat like a cliché she'd rehearsed for decades. The violinist lowered his bow. My stomach did the elevator drop. Caleb didn't perform evidence. He didn't say Derek's name. He didn't explain how he knew. He didn't turn our families into jurors or our friends into a jury of Instagram. He just said, "I'm sorry for the inconvenience. The restaurant will take good care of you tonight. If you made hotel arrangements, please see the maitre d' on your way out, there's a note with details. Please enjoy your meal. This is my only speech." He sat. He did not look at me. The room breathed like a single animal. I stood up because that's what people do in movies when their lives go sideways. My knees did not appreciate the theater. I made a sound that might have been a word in a dialect called panic. "Caleb," I whispered. It was the only word I had that night that wasn't a lie. He didn't stand again, the way he had at his proposal to build a future. He didn't make eye contact, because he knows I am a last-minute juror and my tears are closing arguments. He reached into his jacket, removed an envelope, and handed it to my father. My father, a man who believes in fixes and planks and long screws, opened it. Inside were 2 pages. One typed, one handwritten. The typed page was logistics, deposits forfeited, venue, deposits refunded, DJ, how to return the tuxes, what to tell out-of-town relatives, use the room anyway, breakfast at the hotel is paid for, and a note about the ring. It said, without legalese or spite, that our state treats engagement rings as conditional gifts, typically contingent on marriage, and that he would be asking for it back later, privately, when the room did not have to hold our embarrassment. I made it to the end of that paragraph and touched my left hand. The ring felt heavier, like an object learning it was something else. The handwritten page was 3 sentences to my parents. You raised a daughter people want to orbit, I wanted to be the planet she chose. I don't want a spectacle. I want clean air for everyone. My mother cried in a way that made her look less small than I imagined. Grief can be dignity, too. I cannot tell you, exactly, what happened for the next 10 minutes. Time draped itself across the chairs and refused to move. The manager stepped in and dimmed the lights 1 level, as if we were all being allowed to take off our shoes. Servers arrived with extra bread and ladles of mercy. The violinist packed his instrument into a case that clicked shut with incredible courtesy. Then the first person stood. Not to accuse. To hug me the way you hug someone who is halfway off a boat. Others followed. My aunt whispered, "We love you," like a bandage. My bridesmaid Kayla squeezed my hand so hard I felt my pulse give up. My father put his napkin over his plate like it was the end of a meal in a life where meals still made sense and cleared his throat. "Let's eat," he said, "because men like him believe in using the hands you have." Caleb stayed seated. He spoke softly to his sister, hugged his grandmother, wrote something on the check at the bar, and then, when our table had quieted into cutlery and shock, he stood. He picked up his jacket. He nodded to the room. He walked out. No slammed door, no final line. Just dignity exiting reality. I did not chase him. I wanted to. God, did I want to? But I stood still for once in my life and let a man leave me with his pride intact. People want to know when I knew. When did Harmless calcify into harm? I think it was a Tuesday in April when Derek texted me, "If you ever change your mind, I'll be waiting," and I didn't type, "There will be no mind to change because I am marrying someone else." I typed a shrug emoji and then a heart, as if punctuation could be faithful. It was the night in May when I put on the denim jacket he always loved and took a photo for myself, but made sure the lighting was good enough for someone else. It was in June when Caleb reached for my hand at a movie and I pulled away because holding hands during explosions is corny, but really, my brain was full of someone else's soundtrack. People also want to know how he found the words to be so clean. I think it's because Caleb plans for a living. He manages projects that don't care about feelings but will still collapse if the humans collapse. He did what he does, he stabilized the site and then cordoned it off. He'd emailed the venue at noon after speaking to a lawyer friend over lunch. He didn't accuse, he said, I am canceling for personal reasons. He accepted the deposit loss without turning it into a battlefield. He called the hotel, asked them to hold the rate for anyone who wanted to stay the weekend anyway, gave his card, and told them to comp breakfast on Saturday and Sunday because he could not bear the idea that the only memory our families would have of this city would be a closed ballroom. He texted the officiant, who replied with a blessing over a pot roast. He called his best man and told him not to start a war. Then he put on a suit. The day after, in the gray morning that followed everybody else's late-night texting, he came by the apartment while my mother sat on my couch pretending to look at real estate listings so she wouldn't have to look at me. He knocked like a delivery driver. I opened the door and the ring on my finger did the heaviest thing jewelry can do. It reminded me what it meant. I need it back, he said. Not cruel. Not asking. A sentence that had swallowed 1,000 other sentences to become this one. I slid it off. The dent it left in my skin was shaped like a lesson. We stood in the doorway like people in a play in its last scene. I never touched him, I said, like a child reciting a defense she found under the couch. I never kissed him. I never. You never told me, he said, not unkindly. I asked you 100 little times if you were happy. You kept the part of you that wasn't, and gave it to someone who wanted it without having to earn it. I can live with a lot. I can't live with being the one you lie to and then ask to make a speech about forever. I'm sorry, I said, and the word should have been heavier than it was. Sorry had been working overtime for months on my behalf, it was tired. I believe you, he said. And I'm not interested in a life where sorry is the product. He had a canvas tote bag in his hand with my grandmother's earrings, the vow book I'd left at the rehearsal dinner, and the place cards for the reception. There is something humiliating about peeling your name off a stack of other people's names. He handed me a small white envelope. Inside was a check for my half of the non-refundable costs he'd covered. I don't want money to be one more thing that keeps you from learning this, he'd written in blue ink. I didn't cash it. He'd already bought the lesson. We didn't fight over the apartment. We'd been month to month, he took the lease. I went to my sister's guest room, where I slept under a quilt that smelled like laundry detergent and resignation. We didn't argue about gifts, he returned what he could and donated the rest. He didn't burn my dress or post our messages, he deleted them from his iPad and, I assume, his head, because some men still protect their exes from themselves. When mutual friends asked, he said, it didn't work out. He did not audition for sainthood in a group chat. He left the audition to people like me who think suffering is an alibi. A week later, a florist emailed me a photo of our would-be centerpieces in the lobby of a hospice. Peonies, dahlias, greenery that looked like forgiveness. A nurse had reached out to see if they could use them for families who needed something gentle to look at while the machines did their jobs. I stared at the picture until my shame softened into something with edges I could hold. Beauty doesn't evaporate, it just goes to a different house. I blocked Derek. Not because Caleb asked me to. He never asked me for anything again. But because I finally understood that attention is a currency and I had been laundering mine through someone who didn't need to account for it. Derek texted from a new number a week later, "You okay?" I deleted it like a grown-up. He posted a story of a city skyline and a song that used to make me think we were special. I unfollowed him and the algorithm forgot me faster than I deserved. I wrote Caleb a letter I did not send, because dignity isn't a boomerang. I apologized without seasons or footnotes. I did not ask for another try. He had already told me, with his calm, that trying wasn't the point. Choosing is. When people ask if he ruined the rehearsal dinner, I say yes because it's the word the restaurant used on my receipt. But the truth is he didn't ruin anything. He ended a story cleanly in a room full of people who would have let me pretend. He gave them dinner and me a boundary. He made the manager promise to send the bill to him. He left my mother with a handwritten note instead of a courtroom. He took back a ring the law likely said he could take and the decency absolutely said he should. He walked out without turning my worst night into content. I have stopped saying harmless. It's a small thing, the dropping of that word. But small things are what got me here. Small lies. Small omissions. Small thrills that rode sidecar on big promises. I thought cheating required a hotel. It turns out it can happen in a paragraph with good grammar and worse intent. Caleb will marry someone who does not need to keep a door open behind him to feel sure she wants to walk through the one in front of her. He will hold her hand at movies without having to know whether a man in her phone is using snowstorms like bait. He will make coffee and shake cinnamon into the filter like he's coaxing luck, and he will not have to explain to anyone why that's an act of love. As for me, I have an iPad with iMessage turned off, a phone with fewer notifications, and a therapist who will not let me call what I did a phase. Sometimes I walk past Trattoria Valentina and look through the window at the table where my life took a left turn and think about how quiet everybody was while he gave us back our time. The room is always warm. Dinner smells like butter. Someone is always raising a glass. I don't go in. I don't need an audience anymore to learn the right lesson. I needed one man who refused to be my rehearsal. He stood up, told the truth without pyrotechnics, paid the bill, and left with his dignity zipped all the way up. That's what it looks like when the guy wins. He doesn't make you small. He makes himself whole. And then he walks out the door you opened.